My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Well, hello there, and welcome to WTA Weekly. We are back. Indian Wells is done. I hope everyone's still feeling relatively warm inside, ready for the next part of Sunshine Double. That's our show in a nutshell. I'm very happy to have Brenna on once again to go through all the big stories. Brenna, how are you doing?
I'm great, Nick. Thanks for having me. Excited to recap Indian Wells.
It's going to be, well, there's quite a lot to recap, to be fair. And, well, I was very excited by the semi-final lineup we got at the end in Indian Wells. And I felt like that pretty much any of them could win it. However, it seems fairly incredible that we now have a 17-year-old on a 12-match winning streak across two 1,000 events, the highest possible level in tennis. Mira Andreeva is the third youngest Indian Wells champion at 17 years old. And it's all about her right now, isn't it, Brenna?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. And obviously coming from a, Dubai 1,000 title, which is the first of her career, and coming here and continuing to impress. It's just incredible at such a young age. She's full of confidence. She is, maturing as we speak, but it's just a joy to watch and take down these high level opponents.
And talking of watching, what is it about the way that she's been playing in Indian Wells, particularly, that has taken her to this title, in your view?
Yeah, I mean, I'd start with composure and at least some free thinking in a sense. It's hard when I know we're going to talk about it as we move on, but with Sabalenka and Iga having all these expectations, it's difficult to continue to match those and even outperform those. But for Mira, she's just continuing her success, not thinking too much about, oh, I have to win this event, or oh, it's the end of the world. I think I heard Damien talk about it yesterday, where it almost felt like that final slipped away from her, and she could have been thinking to herself, well, what a great week, I get to another Masters 1,000 final, and I get another chance in Miami. But I just think she does such a good job with her variety, specifically out of the forehand wing. I just talk about the fact that I don't see many players hitting that squash shot. When you don't necessarily have the ability to get around that forehand if it's a little bit too far out wide, she's just super comfortable sliding to her right and hitting a slice shot deep that's usually landing in difficult positions. And then obviously dealing with these windy conditions in Indian Wells, and obviously rain delays when she played Rybakina. But being able to, keep herself in points, play with so much variety, and being able to deal with these conditions, she's hitting so big from the baseline, and then anything that drops short, especially in that Iga match, she was able to hit deep, wide, and then follow it to the net. So it's really just about completing her game. It's been impressive and a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's you can tell that things are starting to come together. She's always had the variety, she's always had the maturity, but she's consistently applying it, and she's combining it with some more power, more bravery, and developing some real weaponry to it. I want to go back to the beginning of kind of what you were saying there, Brenna, and I want to ask you guys, because you talk about like Sabalenka and Swiatek are players that, like it's very hard to surpass expectations now, and anything less than certain results are going to be, less not acceptable. Like borderline less than winning is less than acceptable for them at this point, or at least less than a semi-final. Is it now getting to the point where those expectations are going to start getting put on Mira Andreeva, and how fair is that?
Yeah, I think it's been such an interesting season already from our lead up events in Australia and then Madison Keys coming out on top with just an incredible run, and arguably Mira Andreeva matching that run just at a little bit of a lower level. But obviously at such a young age, so I think those runs are honestly super comparable at this point. And yeah, I think I'd actually point a little bit to something that Sabalenka mentioned in her speech, her runner-up speech is talking about, the team around Mira and how much support and how much love is there. I think she just talked about how important it is at such a young age to have all of that, proper leadership and people you can rely on. And so I think that'll obviously be important for her. And I think or she hired or talked to, a therapist. So that's always helpful. With sport, it's just so difficult to handle the emotions and the stress that it brings. And so expectations are obviously going to continue to be there the more wins that you rack up. So I think that's something that she'll learn throughout her career. Obviously, so young and so early in the year still, where we haven't even gotten to the clay, but she's had so much success. So I think it's just the ability to manage that and keep having fun, keep smiling, and I always think it's super cute when she's saying, I want to thank myself because for digging deep, not giving up, and believing in yourself. And I think all of that, it just speaks to such a positive attitude and camaraderie within her and her.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that she's keeping positive, and I think that's definitely the secret to one of the biggest foundations for why she's doing so well. Is that positivity. I'm just very aware that won't always be there. I mean, it's very unlikely that she's going to now dominate the sport from this point for the next 10 years, right? I mean, she could, but there's a lot of other really, really good players involved. I mean, having said that, as I mentioned, she is on this winning streak. Is it hyperbole to say that at the moment, Mira Andreeva is the best player in the world?
What a loaded question. I don't think, yes, I will start that. Yeah. I think she has the ability to dominate the sport for the years to come and continue to compete with the likes of Swiatek, Sabalenka, Rybakina as she continues to progress and get back to better health. But, as I kind of mentioned earlier in terms of what we've seen this year on the WTA tour and Iga not having a title, for quite a while at this point. But continuing to make it deep. As we go to a different surface, things are going to change. Different conditions, allow other players to get into the mix. But, as you mentioned, it's not always going to be like that. You can't, I mean, you can, but it's just difficult to reproduce that level week in, week out across different surfaces and conditions. But yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to leave her outside the top 5, I'd say right now in women's tennis.
I think that's pretty fair. I think top 5 is probably pretty accurate. I have some thoughts on that maybe later on in the show, but when we kind of go through maybe some of the stories from Indian Wells. Although I will have to say, Brenna, don't rush onto clay just yet, because we still have one more hardcourt event to do before we get there.
That's right.
We're already thinking about surface changes.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's coming quick, but yes, We do have an 1,000 upcoming in Miami on a little bit of a slicker hard court. So, you know,
Oh yeah, I mean you could, but despite the fact that Indian Wells was a bit of a maybe a bit of a tougher court to hit through, Arina Sabalenka didn't have much of a problem with that because she got to the final, second time she was in the Indian Wells final, and I wasn't sure which way the final was going to go, but I was very prepared for Sabalenka saying something along the lines of Sabalenka finally wins Indian Wells, after falling short to Rebecca a couple of years ago. And I mean, she has to win Indian Wells one day, right?
it feels that way. And given her run, she didn't drop a set the entire tournament. So, and obviously coming off a convincing semifinal win versus Keys, and then being up, a pretty casual set there, first set in the final. Things were looking great. Obviously, you don't have Iga Swiatek on the other side, who does have the upper hand in these types of conditions, and historically on this court, being such a tough opponent to beat. So I think things were aligning as, I guess, well as they could have. But obviously, Andreeva being the hottest player on the tour right now, it's obviously not someone you wanted to see, but just given, the age difference, maturity, and experience, you once again, you just have to lean that it was Sabalenka's title to lose at that point.
I mean, it's true, but there was much was being made of like Andreeva was getting break points in that first set and not converting them, and I think when she finally broke in the second, there was a lot of thing of like that was her 18th or 19th break point opportunity against Sabalenka this year, and she finally converted it across all three matches, and that seemed to be the moment everything shifted in the match. That's when Andreeva really started to believe, because I could tell that she was knocking on the door, but Sabalenka was being a bit more clutch, and then the minute Andreeva got that breakthrough, that's what made a difference in the match.
Right, and I agree with you. I think that's when things started to unravel, and maybe using some of Sabalenka's tactics that she was using the first set against her. But I think that also speaks to kind of the mindset and just the ability at 17 years old to play a little bit more freer and go for it a bit more. But yeah, you're right. I think even Sabalenka, I know we've heard Iga talk a little bit more about how handling expectations, and there's true stress on the court, no matter what number is next to your name. And I think that Sabalenka felt that a little bit. And then as the third set dragged on, you didn't really feel like there was going to be, an opportunity. It was slow, methodical service games for Sabalenka after she was playing catch up, but it didn't really look like she had the belief in herself that she was going to make that comeback in the third set.
Yeah, and it's interesting we're talking about this in a minute, because I think these are some of the things that have been mentioned about Iga Swiatek, about sort of almost but not quite for this season, and for maybe the back end of last season as well, post French Open. But probably since the US Open, you can say the same thing about Sabalenka, right? Possibly. I mean, other than winning the title in Brisbane and being a couple of games away from the Australian Open title, I mean, she's also got this situation where she's falling short in like the last hurdle almost, and I feel like it's fair. It's interesting that both the top players in the world are in this situation right now.
Right, and I agree. I think obviously it's not time to worry or make too much of it, but I think that's just coming with what the sport is delivering at this moment in time, especially on the women's tour. And arguably, the men's tour being up in the air, but it was great to see Clara Towson. I feel like it's been a coming out party for her this year. But yeah, that stress and that pressure of a final and being the favorite, I think, like I said, it's just part of sport, and being able to handle those emotions is just as important as the play that you can deliver on the court. And we're getting a little bit of a taste of that. I think it would take a lot more for me to see the sport in a different light in terms of our top players. They're continuing to go deep And it's just like that final hurdle, as you mentioned, it's difficult. And, Sabalenka being so open about how much that Australian Open final loss hurt her. And you could see that clearly in that Middle East swing where, it's just a little bit of lack of motivation, maybe lack of belief, just trying to overcome that mental, failure of not crossing the line in Australia. And so, good to see her respond and do well on this surface. But yeah, as you see it on the screen.
Do you think then that this Indian Wells loss might be another sort of setback for her? I guess it could be difficult to tell in Miami because it's one of the few hard court tournaments she doesn't have a great history with. But do you see that potentially like knocking her again?
I tangled with this a little bit, yesterday after the match because, she's honest, about herself and her emotions, and I think I wouldn't say that this should, knock her off her game by any means. She, I feel like Miami, yeah, as you see, Miami is a court that I feel like she can do well on. With her big hitting from the baseline, with that ball going through the court a little bit more and ending points quicker, like she knows how to. So obviously, we don't want to get too much into the surface change upcoming, but that's a whole little different mini season that we'll enter, and I think hopefully that should allow her to reset no matter what happens in Miami.
That makes sense. I mean, one positive she can take from Indian Wells is that as the world number one, she's supposed to set the standard, and she really set the standard in Indian Wells. Like, even when she wasn't looking great, she was a clear step ahead of pretty much every opponent she played. And then that match against Keys, she was dialed in, and Keys showed that if you can't get near what you need to challenge Arena, it's going to be one-way traffic. And I thought that she definitely set the bar that Andreeva needed to cross to match, and Andreeva rose to that challenge really, really well. But I think, aside from the fact she didn't walk away from the trophy, which was what she wanted, I do think overall Arena's run in this tournament was maybe underappreciated, and that she did a very good. She has basically done what she needed to as being the world number one, whose job is to set the standard.
Yeah, Nick, I think you make a great point because there's something to be said when the match is played on your racket. And that's why I think, as you mentioned, I don't think that should, get in her way of, oh, well, I didn't come out with the title. The title was it was a tricky match, for both of them, and there was ups and downs, but ultimately she didn't, close it out in that deciding set. But like you said, defeating the opponents that she should quite casually in her fashion, and dealing with the wind. I thought that that match against Samsonova was a very windy match, and she was actually down 2-1, and I think Samsonova had chances to hold, but she stuck in those deuces. And I will say another thing talking about Sabalenka is the variety. She's continuing to just advance her game, and that's only gonna suit her well as she moves forward. I'd say we wouldn't be having a conversation like this 2-3 years ago, but just seeing her ability to use the slice, defend well, and then neutralize points when she isn't on the upper hand, it's a great thing to see as she continues to progress.
Yeah, I enjoy watching Aryna Sabalenka a lot more than I used to because of that variety that she's introduced to her game. The fact that she can introduce these other elements in there to mix things up and throw opponents off, or that drop shot is now a staple of her game. And I'm not surprised that she coped with the wind far better than Samsonova in that match or in there. And I think that more well-roundedness is why she is the world number one at the moment. And a big part of why that is. And likely at this point to stay that way for a while, given that her bedrock of points, especially in comparison to her main rival, is not until like the US hardcourt swing, and she's got points to gain potentially at Wimbledon as well. So, big. I think this is. I think Sabalenka and, as I alluded to, her rival Iga Swiatek are in very similar positions. And what I would say about both of them, but particularly Iga, is, they are still the most consistent. Like, Iga is definitely the most consistent player on the tour in terms of consistently getting to at least the quarterfinals of every single big tournament she plays. She's in the conversation. She's at least favorite status up until the point she goes out. And, Sabalenka, okay, it's not every tournament, but that like this point still stands that when she gets close and she's in the mix, as often as she is, it's like highly likely she's going to win a trophy eventually. And I feel like if Iga's going to keep getting herself deep in tournaments, it's inevitable that she's going to win a trophy again eventually, even if it has been a bit of a wait at this point.
Yeah, as you said, I feel like it's in due time, and obviously with the state of the sport, she still has the biggest weapons in the game, and that can take her as far as she wants at this point. And I think as we continue to discuss like the evolution of her game, it's only improving, and her being able to kind of experiment, I'd say, with that game style and gameplay throughout the earlier rounds will continue to benefit her. I think you look at Swiatek in terms of how she deals with a little bit lower level opponents, and it just feels so clinical. She just gets the job done, super efficient, and there's really no hiccups. And then obviously it was definitely an interesting scoreline in terms of that match with Andreeva in the semifinal. But just going back to the ability to play on her terms is the biggest, I'd say, takeaway from Sabalenka and her future.
Yeah, and so for Swiatek, right, they have this ability. She has an amazing ability to play most matches on her terms. She still racks up like high 80% wise in terms of win percentage. That's looking likely to continue this season. I think this is something I was talking to kind of Mario about offline. It's something that I've noticed with Iga is, you talking about her ability to kind of hit the front. I think for me, Iga Swiatek's ability to win and kind of step up against the players that she needs to is going to depend on her patience level. When she's patient, she hits a top level. When she's struggling with patience, it becomes a bit messier. And that's when I think the frustration's coming out sometimes, is that maybe that hope that like, I got through all these other people, why aren't I getting through this person? And not willing to let the match or kind of put the hard work in to do that. I think it's not really a criticism, it's more of an observation, because I know she can do it, and it's going to be very much, and she's done it plenty of times before. That's how she won that epic Madrid match against Sabalenka last year. But it's maybe something that I do notice, that maybe as you're talking about this evolution that's happening, her patience levels are being affected by it.
Yeah, I think you actually make a great point. Just because, when you're playing at such a high level, you don't run into trouble like that. And I think she's actually been talking about that recently, when more and more getting deeper into matches, and you feel the stress, and you maybe play a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And we know Iga, like you said, probably for 80% of matches lives in her comfort zone, playing on her terms. And talking about an Indian Wells track that suits her perfectly. The win was something that was tough to deal with. But yeah, there is a little bit of a lack of patience and ability to play out your tactics, see how they work, and then adjust, rather than panicking in that sense. But yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up.
I mean, did we see that lack of patience on display in that sort of last match that against Andreeva?
I think I credit Andreeva more than Iga downfall, just given how she managed the emotions well, she served so well, and kind of letting that rest breadstick, I would say, put it behind her and focus on that third set. But yeah, I mean, talk about frustration coming into play. That was quite clear for Swiatek, and I think she would say herself that she didn't, deal with it too well. Whereas Andreeva, stayed cool, and yes, the ability to play free at 17 years old is quite a blessing.
And in fact, Iga has said that she hasn't dealt with it well because she's just released an apology for what happened with the ball kid. I think that's so that's great that she's dealt with that and that she's been up with that. And like, I hope that we can move on fairly quickly from that. It's if she's kind of apologized for it and she knows that this is a thing that needs working on, and work at it she will, because we know there's no one who works harder than her in the sport. And I think she's going to be trying to adjust for whatever new challenges come. Like, we've got Sean Power in the live chat saying that Andreeva's defense is going to give a lot of headaches to big players, and that's true. I think Iga probably isn't used to people being able to defend against her in the way that Andreeva can, and that's probably why she's lost the last couple of matches against her. But and in fact, Andreeva is now one of the few people who has a leading head-to-head against Iga Swiatek. The only other person being Jelena Ostapenko, active players anyway.
That's right.
So that's a crazy stat, but I'm a crazy stat. But yeah, I think you want to comment on that point. But I'm still optimistic that Iga's going to adjust. And as I said, at least on the clay, like, it would be crazy if she doesn't win a title this clay season. I think she's going to keep knocking the door, and eventually it'll open for her.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I think this is definitely, I think she even said in the message, just ability to get, put her emotions out there and be open and honest about it. I think it's definitely, it's hard because she feels like, oh, now I'm being emotional on the court and, I'm receiving backlash. Whereas if I'm, too, focused, consistent, then I look like a robot and I'm showing no emotion. So I think it's just like we said, like the mental battles within sport. It's it takes. That's what I appreciate about tennis. It takes a team to really bring everyone together and be on the same page, because yes, it can be definitely detrimental, mentally, and that leads into how you play on court. But Iga, I think she's so strong. She's experienced. She's a winner. So I think things should get back into play. What I do think we should mention was, because it's actually a topic on the men's tour now, but it's the fact that she doesn't think she can reach the world number one because of her, her doping suspension, which she had to miss the Asian swing, I think it was. So she feels that she won't have the ability to reach that goal, and that's difficult for her to kind of deal with mentally. And she was open and honest about how that affected her in Dubai. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but just another consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why it would affect her. I would say the results suggest not, and I think it's other things going on. In addition to that, I think if it was affecting her that badly, she'd be losing a lot earlier and a lot more concerningly. Whereas she's losing late stages to players who are very, very good and often go on to win. I think the only time she hasn't lost to the eventual champion was when she lost to Ostapenko, and we know what Ostapenko can do to her. Right. So what Ostapenko's like. So I don't think that's. I highly doubt that. But you can't speculate on what's in a player's head, and that really frustrates me because none of us know these people well. It's all a very parasocial relationship, and assuming what someone thinks based on what you can see on a TV screen, I find it frustrating trying to predict that. I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. Because you were talking about showing emotion, I don't understand why it matters so much to people whether players show emotion or not. It literally doesn't bother me. If they want to show emotion, that's part of the story. If they don't, that's actually really, really cool. One of the reasons I love Elena Rybakina is that she's the ice queen. It's one of the reasons why I love Roger. He stayed steely faced in the face of pretty much anything that came his way. And if he lost his temper, then something big was happening. So I don't understand why it matters so much to people. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way of dealing with emotions. We've seen players manage to be successful handling their emotions or one way or another. It has to be what works.
Right. No, I totally agree with you, Nick. I think that's just a part of the sport, and especially with an individual sport, it just gets, we see it in as such a big light, and it's very, public, and obviously images and videos move quite quickly. So, everyone wants to have an opinion on it. But I'm with you. I think that's just part of the sport, and, emotion or lack thereof is part of the game, it's part of the battle.
Yeah. I wanted to quickly make a point. I know I'm kind of going slightly off topic because I appreciate we've got another semi-finalist to cover. But my point about ego and patience, I wanted to kind of get your opinion on this as well. In a similar way, I feel like Coco Gauff, her game is very much confidence-based. If she's feeling good and she's feeling confident enough to hit through everything, she plays well and motors through opponents. If she doesn't, it's a scrap to get through. And she is one of the best players at winning ugly, and if not the best player at winning ugly and getting the win, even when she's not playing well. I can't think of anyone better than her at that. But when she comes across maybe someone who's going to really challenge her, how much confidence she has in herself and how much she backs herself does seem to have an impact on her ability to execute. And we saw that in Indian Wells in that loss to Bencic, as we have been seeing maybe across the Middle East this week as well. But that's my opinion. Wants to hear your thoughts on it, Brenna.
I totally agree with you. And obviously, Coco still being so young, and having so much experience at this age, I think she puts a lot of pressure on herself. And when things don't go to plan, you're right. I feel like it does derail her, mentally, and you can see that. But then, through her performance, she does have the ability to play with different styles. She can be super aggressive, but as you said, can be one of, I think she's arguably the best athlete on the women's tour, and she can, defend very well. But then you see her going so big on a forehand, an open court forehand, and missing into the net, and it's, hands to the face. And I think, it definitely affects her ability to, think properly, think tactically, and it kind of, I think it blurs her vision of, shot selection, net play, and big point play specifically.
Yeah, and I mentioned it because I think it still comes again not to press the panic button on Coco Gauff, because all she needs is a shot on the arm and her game will work. I don't think there's anything fundamentally she needs to do to change anything, because when she's swinging and it's going in, it's amazing, and she's world beating. We saw that at WTA finals, the United Cup, and a lot of the Australian Open. And going to the Indian Wells specifically, Belinda Bencic wasn't necessarily a bad loss either, given the kind of form Bencic is in. She seems to be motoring her way back towards the top 20, if not the top 10. Bencic is not bad for anyone to lose to at the moment. So I definitely wouldn't be pressing any kind of panic buttons with Coco at all.
Right, and I agree. I think that was a difficult match. I talked about it a little bit before. I thought it was very close to 50-50. And Bencic served really well too, which is, big in the match. And she dictated points pretty early, and, wasn't really allowing Coco Gauff to have that time and redirect, the paces as well. But I will quickly point out, Ozan's asking about the second serve. I think it's just I think maybe so spotlighted, because I feel like that's what we talk a lot about when we're talking about Coco Gauff and, what's going wrong in these matches. Why are the double faults, continuing to pile up? Um, I'd say it's a mix of both, and especially, on those big points, the second serve is obvious. When you don't have confidence in it, yeah, it makes it tough to land. But we won't talk too much more about that. But
Yeah. No, well, I think we'll probably get back on track with sort of the normal structure of these kind of reviews, because Bencic beat Goff and then lost to Madison Keys, who, again, like I would say, really good couple of weeks for her in Indian Wells. She followed up that AO title run with a semi-final run and looked, maybe not as good as she did in Australia, but certainly I was impressed by the way she got to the semi-finals, in that she had to scrap a little bit, but she never played below a level that was, she never played a level that made her seem beatable by anyone, up until Sabalenka, who, is probably on par in terms of level with her right now. And it did feel like, watching Keys for most of this Indian Wells run, that she's kind of joining that elite group at the top that's setting the standard for everyone to beat.
right, I think you're spot on in terms of the way she got here. It wasn't necessarily easy, and that's important in tennis. Being able to win when maybe you're losing that tight battle. Like, was kind of surprised, or super surprised she lost that tiebreak for Mertens, but able to come back and cement that victory. But yeah, I think going into these matches and watching them, I kind of had that same takeaway in terms of, like, all right, you are a borderline top 5, top 8 player, and you deserve to be here, and points are going to be dictated on your terms. And she was able to, what felt like that battle versus Vekic, where it almost felt like she was trailing the whole match, but being able to power through, and her baseline game looked good again. I think these conditions were obviously much different from Australian Open, but the ball, bouncing up a little bit higher for her to use her power from the baseline. It was fun to watch.
Would you say that Keys win over Vekic was the best match of the tournament, or would you put some of the candidates out there? WTA.
Yeah, I definitely love that match. I felt the emotions there.
Oh, of course, we've got a bit of Keys bias here, have we?
Yeah, exactly. I'm taking a quick look through the draw here.
I'd say the other match I heard good things, or I either saw or thought good things about, obviously final being a 3-setter is in the conversation. The Andreeva win over Swiatek, the Bencic win over Coco, and then the other option being maybe from earlier in the tournament, Navarro beating Castella was that caused some ripples in terms of the way Navarro got that win.
Yes.
That's kind of on the grapevine. I've kind of heard maybe those are kind of the matches that people would highlight from this tournament.
Yeah, and I agree. As you see, going through some of those previews there, I was talking with John about, I just felt like this was kind of almost like a little bit of a hangover spot for Madison Keys, coming back to the US, trying to fulfill these expectations, and obviously going against, tough players in terms of, Vekic, who's, had a great 8-9 months, and Bencic obviously coming back and playing huge. So I think it's just like the ability to get through those tough moments and continue to propel herself forward. That's, you got to take away positives.
Oh, for sure. I think Keys has still got to be super positive with the way that she started. I am very confident we're going to see a top 4 before long in the year, which is really, really exciting. And actually, that kind of brings us to kind of the bigger picture of the WTA at the moment, which I feel like this episode of WTA Weekly does feel a little bit like state of the nation type episode. But I wanted to ask your opinion on this. Do you think that the WTA is now being defined not by 4 players, but by 6? Those 6 being Sabalenka, Swiatek, Gauff, Keys, Andreeva, and Rybakina?
I'd say more. I would lean yes to that question. I'd say, I feel like Pagula is kind of, drifted away a bit. Emma Navarro being able to, scrap out those victories at big events, given Wimbledon and U.S. Open against Coco, that obviously propels her up the rankings. But yeah, it just feels like those players have the ability to play tennis on their terms, and I think, did we include Kunun Zhang in there, or she would be the outsider alongside?
I would include her as I would say she's
Probably.
an outsider. Based on the early part of this season, she's only seemed to have just got it going with that quarterfinal run in Indian
Right.
Wells. Obviously, she had a very good end of the second half of 2024, but she seems quite a streaky player, and I do think she does have some matchup issues with some of these top players as well. I do think she's a very promising talent, but until she I think there's another step that she needs to make to, as you would put it, kind of be the one who's setting the standard and playing on her terms. And I don't feel like she does that enough at the moment. So I probably wouldn't include her in mine.
Right. And I feel like those, 6, they're proven, in these big moments, having played in, such big tournaments and having such big wins. So I think that's important.
I mean, there's only one. I'm thinking about it now, and actually, there was one other name you could put in there, but I do feel like at the moment she's maybe fighting to keep herself in this contention. But maybe Clara Towson, based on how the season's gone, given that she like Rebecca is only really losing to champions at the end of the tournament, or like the people who go really deeper right in the mix at the end of the tournament. For the most part, anyway, maybe not so much some of the small tournaments she's played, but Towson does seem like maybe that person who's pushing in. It could be the next person to look at pushing into that.
Yeah, I would say so. I think she has, the baseline game to hang with those, top players, and I think that's important. Obviously, I would speak to the fact that, actually, I would highlight that Australian Open match for Sabalenka, when she was able to at least put a lot of pressure on Sabalenka, and that was like, I think you saw some self-belief from her, and then going into the Middle Eastern swing and getting another crack at it. It was fun to watch her, get that redemption that I thought, was coming. And it was a little bit of a down spot, as I spoke to, with Sabalenka not being fully mentally there, and obviously, still sulking on the Australian Open loss. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think she has weapons and the tools and the ability to hang with those big hitters.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Actually, at the moment she's shown she can hang with them. Let's see if she's the trendsetter, but certainly looking very, very promising and very exciting in terms of tennis. And I guess one other name that's like complete wild card, because because she's got injured and we've got no idea where she's at, if she's even going to get back to where historically she's been. But everyone's always asking if Naomi Osaka is going to be a trendsetter again as well. And I'm very curious to see how she does in Miami. Yeah, that would be the other person that maybe I'd be, well, hang on a minute, she could do that, but not much evidence so far this season. It's all very much on potential from the past.
Right. I think we did discuss her a little bit in our little small prediction preview for, Indian Wells opportunities. But yeah, I mean, it was so much fun to watch her at the start of the season. She did great out in, Auckland in Australia. And there you go. That was a match against, Towson. She won the first set, but ultimately had to retire. So yeah, and I guess another name that you could kind of put in that same sort of category is Amanda Anisimova. I think it was fun to watch, just her baseline ability, hitting so cleanly off both wings, and it almost, you see that kind of effortless power in her, in her ground strokes. And obviously, I'd say like Danielle Collins. I know it's kind of felt like we haven't really seeing her emotion and all that after Australian Open. So, she's another name that always is contending and has the ability to, perhaps an upset.
Yeah, Collins is in an interesting position at the moment because, sort of since that sort of clay run, she's kind of not necessarily hit those heights again, but obviously going into Miami where she's defending champion. And I think it's worth talking about her when we go into the preview for that. And yeah, you're right, Anisimova. I hadn't thought about her before, but you're right. Like, she's also someone else for like that peak ability that she has. Like, yeah, you can't rule her out as any kind of wild card scenario. So absolutely, Madonna Anisimova could say, "Oh, I'm here as well, and I'm here to set some trends."
All right.
Let's talk Miami then, shall we?
Yeah.
So, goodbye, Indy Wells. Hello, Miami, as we go into part 2 of the Sunshine Double. And I'm trying to mix things up a little bit. Normally, when I go through these kind of draw predictions, we're kind of like going through who we think could go through. But because the WTA, there's quite a few names in the mix. We see quite a lot of surprises fairly often. I thought I'd try and change maybe how we do this a little bit. Still go through quarter by quarter. But what I would like to do, Brenna, is for each quarter, let's highlight the names that we think will probably go through, but also highlight at least 3 names that you think could provide an upset for that person that we think could go through. So, I'll start. For example, quarter number 1 is Sabalenka's quarter. She is the favorite, despite never making it past the quarterfinals before at Miami. But she does have quite a few big threats in her section. And let's see if we can identify those. I think there's one very obvious one in her section. And I don't know if you've seen the draw yet, Brenna, but I think it's pretty obvious who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I'm looking at it as we speak. I think, I mean, whoever comes out, I mean, yes, I think it's going to be, hard even in that round of 32 battle. But yeah, we do have, Rybakina, who she would eventually face in that quarterfinal. That's correct. Yep. Yeah, it's quite a heavy quarter there. I mean, with Vekic and Danielle Collins, as we brought up, that's some big hitting.
Yeah. Oh, I looked at this and went, ooh, that's a little tough. Like, Rybakina is the one I'm most worried about for Arena. I think in the past, Rybakina would always be the joint favorite to get out. And I'm going to say this now. This might be controversial. I think if that quarterfinal did happen, I'd actually back Rybakina in that maybe, because Rybakina seems to quite like playing Arena. Always seems to win a set against her at least. And even when Rybakina was coming back in the WTA finals and kind of fighting her feet, she managed to get a win over Arena. And I think that is something. I think she's a big threat to Arena. The other big threat to Arena, as you've highlighted, that last of 32 battle, actually would it be, no, it'd be last 16 actually.
Yeah, okay.
It's either going to be Danielle Collins, who's the defending champion and stuff to prove, but Donna Vekic, who has a very lopsided, weird head-to-head with Sabalenka, 6-2. Like, Sabalenka's only beaten Vekic when she is on her game and running her way to a Grand Slam title. That's the only 2 times she's beaten Vekic. Then the rest of the time, Vekic seems to find a way of bothering Arena. And if that's a 4th round battle, get the popcorn out, because Vekic could be there to spring an upset.
Great, and I'm with you. And given that that level she was able to produce at Indian Wells versus Keith, and arguably could have taken that match, it seems like she should be full of confidence, and especially like we said, I think that's going to be an interesting battle. It does line up between Bekic and Collins, 2 kind of similar game styles. So that'll definitely be a highlighted match if we get there.
Yeah. So I guess for me, if I was going to say like the favorites for this quarter would be Sabalenka and Rybakina. My top 3 outsiders to make the semi-final would be Donna Vekic would be the number 1, because she can beat Arena. And I think if she beats Arena, I'd feel comfortable with the idea of her beating Rybakina as well, if Rybakina got that far. Danielle Collins is in that mix as well. I think if Danielle catches fire in Miami, maybe she loves playing there. You never know. It's one of I know she's not really necessarily shown it, but you can't rule her out as the defending champion. And I know I kind of was a little bit down about her early in the show, but Zhang Qinwen, I think she does seem to that quarterfinal run in Indian Wells is noteworthy. I think maybe she's getting something going again. And if she is and she's got some momentum, let's see what she does in this draw as well. But she would be my third kind of outsider to kind of make the semi-finals.
Right, and I think about her game too. It should fare well on this type of surface. She likes to play super tight to the baseline, and I talk about effortless power. It's just I think that's another thing that she possesses, despite maybe her stature, and you wouldn't expect it, but she really despite providing pace, she can absorb and deflect plays really really well. Given that she stands so tight to that baseline. I feel like it's been a while since I've talked about her, but Leylah Fernandez, do you have any thoughts on her, Nick? She's one of those players that, should beat the players that, she should beat. But then, it's been a while. I don't really know off the top of my head her last, really successful tournament. But, she's one of those players that always offers so much variety, and, you kind of never know what you're going to get. But has that fighter mentality and ability to, on her day, you don't know, how difficult a matchup that could be. So I'll just throw that out there.
Good for throwing it out. I mean, I looked at this draw and I was like, do I want to be a Fernandez believer? Yeah. I love Leylah Fernandez. She is one of my favorite players to watch. Like very few challenges to that. I'm trying to think. Yeah, when was her last title? Because she's had a lot of good moments, a few deep runs now and again. At events, I think she's got a couple of quarterfinals in 1000s from last season. Obviously, she's doing well in the doubles as well. But yeah, her last WTA Tour title was 2023 in Hong Kong. Other than that, Eastbourne final last year as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Fernandez. I'd love to see her do it, but I think she's going to have to try and really dig deep and find that fighter mentality that got her to that US Open final. Okay. And it's in there somewhere. I guess it depends on whether she can not be overwhelmed, but when she's on, she's so much fun to watch, and I would love to see her do well.
Perfect.
All right. So quarter number 2. And I'm going to say this now. If you're a Coco Gauff fan, you're probably enjoying this quarter, because like there are dangerous players in there, don't get me wrong, but if Coco Gauff is on, you'd feel relatively comfortable about the idea of her making the semi-finals, right?
Yeah, on paper, it should be hers. I actually think it might be a little bit of an oddball matchup in terms of her second round opponent. She's gonna get Kvitova, who obviously coming back, and then you got Sophia Kenin, who has that ability to kind of redline and take you off her game. So, but yeah, I mean, on paper it should be hers. I think it'll be interesting to see kind of the bottom half on Stripper coming back. See where her health is at. And I wouldn't count out. I'll say one more name in terms of just a little spiel in terms of Alexandrova. Has a really good game for this type of surface, low bouncing. What match am I thinking of? Did she do well in the Middle East?
She did. She beat Sabalenka. She got to the semis.
You're right. That's what it was. Yes.
Lost under Samova.
Yes.
In Doha.
Yes. And I think she's actually very comparable with Samsonova as well. Similar game style. So look, there are players who can get hot. And I think the bottom half of this quarter might be a little bit, easier to deal with. But I mean, like I said, we'll say on paper it should be Coco's, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Alexandrova, I skimmed over her, but you are absolutely right to highlight her, especially given she actually did well in Miami last year as well. She's defending semi-final points, and she beat Iga Swiatek Like, yeah, she's definitely a dangerous player, and I can't believe I kind of skimmed over that. But yeah, she should definitely go on the top 3 outsiders list for sure. Jasmine Paolini, don't rule her out. I know she's kind of got a bit of a last 16 wall at the minute, but I quite like her draw potentially. I know Ons is in there, and it's going to be health dependent, but she's not necessarily her best on a hard court. Like that one, that match is going to be a lot of fun either way, because it's going to be very dynamic. It's going to be a lot of running around. But I could see Paolini making the quarters. Naomi Osaka's in this section as well. Like, don't count Osaka out at all. If she's healthy and she's recovered from whatever his injury was from Australia, yeah, I'm interested to see what she could do as well. She's definitely a dangerous player and one to watch.
100%. Yeah. I apologize. She slipped my my eye as she's waiting a qualifier. So yeah, I mean, talk about a great opportunity to get her match reps and hopefully a good win and obviously take on a tough opponent in Samsonova who is playing well.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few people playing like Kasakina's in there, a few others, but like in terms of like people, I'm like, they've made some waves this year, or even a little bit. Like, yeah, I think I think we've identified Goff's 3 main challenges probably being Paolini, Osaka, and Alexandrova, probably for that section. All right, Q3, third quarter, and I'm going to shock. It's probably not a shock to anyone who is a long-standing tennis fan, but the person who was the highest seed in this quarter is probably not the favorite to make the semifinals.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Do you have the same name in mind as me as who the favorite to make the semifinals is?
I believe we do. That is.
We haven't actually discussed it ahead of time, so he actually has no idea what is in my head.
Right. I'll go with the recency bias of Mira Andreeva.
Spot on. That's my favorite to make it to the semifinals from this quarter as well. She has to be, right? The way she's playing, the momentum behind this win streak. Like, we'll have to see how much fatigue plays, but she's got a few days off to travel to Miami and get acclimatized. She's going to benefit from the bye. Yeah, I think Miami could be a really, really another big opportunity for her, at least to get to another semi-final. And having said that, though, there are some very dangerous players in her section. I've spotted 6 players who could well stop that minimum, not least Jessica Pegula, who is the actual 4th seed, if she plays well. But yeah, there's definitely a few other names in the mix there that you're like, yeah. Anna Samova, we mentioned her earlier.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page, Nick. This is it's pretty loaded in terms of, I'd say, form and ability. I'd start even at the top. I mean, I feel like we kind of gloss over Navarro right now. She's kind of, gritted out some wins this year, and it hasn't been the best, but we know, especially being on U.S. soil, she's going to get some good support. But I'd go with Lena Noskova. I think she was playing so well in the Middle East, I believe, and she has that game where she's another one of those players who can dictate, and it feels quite effortless in a sense. That power is there. She can hit big, and she backs herself well. And obviously we mentioned, Samsonova, like that's gonna be a tough test. I think that's one that tennis fans are looking forward to. And I'll give a quick shout out to Lulu Sun, who I'm actually a big fan of. She's a lefty and has big weapons. So I think this is a court that should suit her well. But yeah, I mean, in terms of conditions, like we have a lot of big hitters here who do well and don't count out. Maybe I'll let you talk about her, but Diana Schneider.
Schneider was on my list. Yeah. Obviously, I think she's been a bit kind of patchy this year so far. It'd be interesting to see what happens when she catches fire. A lot of these like under 20, like rising under 22 stars are all together almost with Andreeva, Noskova, Schneider. They're all together. I'm interested to see if Schneider can catch fire. Same with Kostyuk as well. Kostyuk's in there, but another sort of streaky player. But yeah, I like your kind of identifying of Sun, although she's also very, very patchy right now in terms of results. But yeah, I'd agree with you that maybe Andreeva, although being the favourite on paper, she does have maybe some of the tougher challenges. She's got potentially Anisimova around 3, and then either Navarro or Noskova. Well, that's going to be a heck of a fight, that third round, if that happens, in round 4. So she's got a bit of a battle to get to the quarters, but and again, we'll see how much she has in the tank for that. But I'm interested to see sort of like this quarter feels pretty open. Yeah, and a lot of it is on paper, but obviously Andreeva is well beating right now. So it's very interesting when you talk about on paper and then seeing all these names in the mix. And I agree with you, like the big hitting in there. Like, it's going to be fun to watch. Having said that, if we thought that quarter was stacked, the fourth quarter, oh my word. And I genuinely cannot call a singular favorite from this fourth quarter. I think both of our favorite players are in this quarter. Iga Swiatek and Madison Keys, they're pretty much joint favorites to make the semis. And conditions wise, you might even give the edge to Keys, right?
Yeah, I totally would. And I feel like, the player that's still popping out is Elena Svitolina, and just her ability to continue to produce a high level, no matter where she is, kind of in the world, kind of carrying Ukraine on her back and being that powerful force in the women's game. But she's been so just been unbelievable. Just her ability to continue to have consistency and reproduce that level. Another name that, like we saw last week, with Elise Mertens, she has that ability to do well, especially that backhand. I don't want to go too quick through all these names because there's so many good names in here, but I will give a shout out to Peyton Starnes, Katie Bolter. That should be a really good first round match.
Oh yeah.
That should be pretty wicked. I'm big on
going
Stearns.
3.
Yeah, exactly. But she's got a huge, powerful game. That forehand's super big. And then we'll see ideally another rematch between Swiatek and Garcia. But I mean, everywhere we look, you can talk about maybe the top half of this quarter, because wow.
I mean, let's face it. Okay, nobody would be surprised if any of the following players made it. Swiatek, Keys, we've said, but Svitolina, good spot there. She's definitely looking quite good at the moment. Clara Towson's in here as well.
I know, exactly.
She's in there. Belinda Bencic, one of the form players of the season so far. Karolina Mukova, who's still trying to get herself back in that top 10 and is racking up results. Yelena Ostapenko is lurking to cause chaos. Literally, this feels like a genuinely competitive quarter. Not as in it's anyone's because they're a similar level, but like all of these players could catch fire or have caught fire at some point this season. And this is where I think the second half, this half of the draw is crazy right now. And that's why it's really, really hard to call like who's making it through to the semi-finals, because usually I get people to pick like who their semi-finals are, who their semi-finalists are going to be. I guess, do we want to be brave, Brenna?
Let's do it. I would say this. I would love to see a Towson Ostapenko match. Huge hitting. That would be fun. That's not my prediction. I'm just saying that as
that'd be funny though. Yeah,
it would be funny. All right. Would you like to go first, Nick?
Okay, I think. Do you know what? I'm going to go with my gut for once, and I'm just going to go all ham here. My prediction from the first quarter semi-finalist is going to be Elena Rybakina.
Love it.
Quarter number 2. I'm gonna go with Jasmine Paolini. Quarter number 3. I'm gonna go with Emma Navarro. And quarter number 4, I'm gonna go with Madison Keys.
Love it. Love it. I think that was good variety. That was good variety from you.
Yeah.
All right. I am gonna go with crazy Donna Vekic.
Okay.
Up top. Yeah, a little bit bolder, but I need one of those. Quarter number 2, I'm gonna go Coco Gauff.
Yeah,
Her time to shine in Miami. We'd love to see it. Quarter number 3, I'm tangling with it, but it's just so hard to in this case, pick against her, bet against her. Vera Andreeva.
Yeah, it literally in the wheel in quarter number 3, right?
Yeah, it's insane. And then to finalize my semifinal on the bottom, I'm gonna go with a little Iga Swiatek. In her case, little redemption here.
Okay.
Yep. To find herself
I'm
back in
glad
the semifinal.
I'm glad someone believes in her, given I am supposed to be a fan. And I've gone with a bit of fan pessimism here. All right, so let's talk about this fan. So, Vekic Goff, who wins that match? That semi-final, do you think?
Goff.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Mira Swiatek, third meeting in 2025. Who wins that one?
I'm going with Iga.
Going with Iga. So your final is Coco Gauff versus Iga Swiatek in Miami.
Just like it was in Cincinnati, I think. Yes. Right?
No,
that
was the semi-final a couple of years back.
Okay.
The semi-final was Sabalenka Pegula last year. I think Goff.
Oh, yes.
She won it.
United
Cup is the final.
Well, there is one match I'm thinking of, but anyway, yes.
United Cup final.
Probably, but I'm thinking might have been 2 years ago. 2 years back. 2 years back. Yeah.
So
Coco's
who wins?
First.
Are you going for Coco to win Miami? Or are you going for Iga redemption?
Iga
redemption.
Semi and Cincy. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. It was their first win over. It was their first win. Yep. Broke the.
I like it.
It's really brutal. Yeah.
I like it. Yep. I wish I'd gone for it. I wish I was not fighting my own biases here. But I'm going to try. All right, mine. I've gone for a Rybakina Paolini semi-final at the top half, and I'm going with Rybakina to win it.
Love it.
And then Navarro. I mean, I don't know why I'm going for Navarro, but I just going pick a name. I just don't know whether Andreeva is going to run out of gas with that tough a draw early on.
Right.
So I'm going to go with Navarro on an American hardcourt. Can't necessarily rule her out there against Maddie Keys. I mean, part of me did want to go for someone else like Towson. Towson would be fun as well, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Navarro against Keys, or I've already said Keys. I'm going to have to stick with it. I'm going to go with Keys to win that match. Rybakina Keys final in Miami. Third final in a row for Rybakina at Miami. And I think she's going to get her redemption and she's going to be lifting that trophy.
I love it. I think it's a great opportunity for her to get back on the center stage.
Yeah. Although, let's face it, if your prediction works out, I'm not going to complain.
Sounds good to me.
There we go. Right. That's it, guys. I'm fully aware that I've literally just thrown a dartboard out there, but I'm going with my gut on how I think this draw is going to go out. We'll see. My gut's usually wrong, but this is why this is fun.
Okay.
And this is why this Miami tournament is going to be fun, because I think we've just gone through it and gone, there's a lot of potential winners here, Brenna.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much opportunity, obviously. they get the little extra time to make the trip from Indian Wells to Miami and refocus and get used to the courts and conditions. And you know, as you said, we got one last hard court 1,000 here, and everyone can go, all in and focus big. So yeah, as you said, so many names, so many opportunities. But I mean, I think we're in the same boat. It's going to be an awesome, exciting tournament.
I'm looking forward to it. I know you are. I'm looking forward to watching some of those matches with you, Brenna. And I'm looking forward to watching matches with all of you lot as well. Thanks everyone for watching, whether you've been watching live or you've watched or listened back to us. Thanks to anyone who listens on the podcast as well. Really appreciate it. Any kind of views. If you haven't subscribed to any of our feeds yet, especially on YouTube, please do. We've got lots of great content coming your way from Miami. You've seen throughout the show or heard about us talking about our little prediction shows that we do throughout the tournament. We do live streams of watch-alongs for matches. This is a great place to be for following tennis, and I think you should definitely come and join the family. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Take care and keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.